Hello, hello. What a wonderful morning. Take this beautiful and wonderful morning to reflect on God's divine providence. And when we talk about divine providence, is when we surrender to God and we give everything that we have to Him, despite the challenges of our time. Throughout history, we went through a few things how divine providence has worked throughout history. We go to the beginning of time. God creates Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. You see, God is all seeing, is all knowing, all powerful. And in his divine nature, he gives man a place and gives him specific instructions. So we call that God is our overseer. He sees beyond our knowledge. So, how does this divine providence work? Divine providence means that God takes care of our needs. He takes charge of our suffering and our pain. He oversees, protect, is the divine protector of our life. So take a sample. We are going to look in the Bible from throughout history. We take Abraham as a human person and his journey and his encounter with God. Abraham is a man. He has lived for 75 years. He has no kids, he has no child, and he's so wandering. He's a faithful man to the Lord. But the Lord appears to Abram and by three visitors who visit Abram. Abram welcomes them, feeds them, and that is how God spoke to Abram. And then you see God meets Abram again at the age of 100. He makes a divine covenant with him. This divine covenant was a covenant that God made with Abram. Abram becomes a friend of God. Abram is a man of faith from the history of the Bible. We see Abram as a man of faith. Abram was not afraid. God gives him instructions. God tells him to move from one place to another. He does. Abram is promised a child, and the child was Isaac, a child of promise. You see, God works mysteriously in His ways, in His divine providence, that we surrender our needs to Him. We surrender our hopes to Him. We surrender our fears to the Lord our God. So you see, Abraham now, his presence comes through him because of the fear of the Lord, because he was a man of faith. Faith makes Abraham move from Haran to Canaan. Faith makes Abraham be willing to give his only son for sacrifice, but God stops him. You see, that's faith, faith and actions. We move from there, we see the story of Jacob. Jacob, he begets the 12 sons who are called Israel. And Israel, you see, we have Joseph. Joseph was a man of dreams. God's divine providence was upon him, and God spoke through him through dreams. And you see, God takes him from there. He takes him because God had made a covenant with Abraham at the age of 100, and he promised him a great nation. His kingship would be in foreign land, in slavery for 450 years. You look at the accountability and you see how God does mysteriously to fulfill his goal. God is a God of promise. And they take a sample of this story of Joseph. We cross examine and see how Joseph was very honest, faithful, and trustworthy to whatever he did. Always remember to be trustworthy, faithful to whatever you are given. So Joseph is present by God and through his dreams. What's really divine providence? How does God work mysteriously through his divine providence? When people surrender to God, God works through mysterious ways. When we surrender our fears, think of the story of Anna in the Bible and the child Samuel. Anna feared God. Anna revered God. Anna believed in God's divine providence. That's why Hannah would wake up, go to the altar, and pray. Her prayers pour spirit. It's like the Korba say. God tells him, seek and you'll find. Or Jeremiah, the Lord speaks to Jeremiah eh, to tell the sons and daughters of Israel to call to him and he will hear them. To seek him with all their hearts, soul, and mind, and God will find them. To Hosea, God says, where there are wounds, God will bandage them, will heal them. So you imagine about this God's divine providence as a God who is a foreseer, a God who's beyond boundaries, a God who stands the test of our time. In reflection of the entirety of divine providence, we see God throughout history speaking. God spoke and it came to be. He spoke through the prophets. They believed in God's divine providence. They surrendered to God. Look at Daniel as a prophet of God in the pit of lions. He surrendered to divine providence. God saves Daniel. God does mysterious. Look at the story of Ruth and Mordecai and Esther. You look at that story. It's so strange in the Persian kingdom. And you think how God does mysteriously to fulfill his whatever he has in his goals. It is through God's divine providence that the sons of Israel moved from Egypt to the land of Canaan through the power of God. So, brethren, it is the gift of God that we think of this divine providence. The divine providence presides over things. God is a foreseer. God sees things. God is a protector. God is all knowing and all powerful. There is nothing impossible to God. Though our mountains, though our pain may be like mountains, but God brings an end to our suffering. He brings a justice system. He brings order in our life. So, brethren, stay tuned and God bless you.